It's the first month of school, and already the energy is draining out of the room. Every teacher knows this familiar, exhausting routine. Sitting in a brightly lit room, trapped in a meeting that seems to have no clear point. Look at what usually fills this time. 10 minutes of announcements that could have been an email, a devotion that has nothing to do with the rest of the agenda, and endless updates where everyone reports on their day primarily for the principal's benefit. When this happens, people naturally check out. Phones start hiding under the table. The teachers carrying the heaviest classroom loads start looking at the clock, feeling like the meeting is a penalty pulling them away from their actual work. Burning 30 minutes on a poorly run meeting signals that leadership sees teacher time as an available resource rather than a precious one. Even the most dedicated staff will notice when their planning periods are treated as a tax rather than a tool for their work. Solving this requires a shift in how the meeting is built. You have to shrink the time limit so severely that only the absolute essentials can fit inside the container. The 12-minute format operates on a strict rule. The room can only accomplish 3 specific jobs. Adding a 4th job breaks the system and pushes the clock back toward 40 minutes. Logistics like schedules and copier codes move to a weekly memo. The first 3 minutes are for scripture tied to a current building reality. The next 5 minutes focus on examining one piece of student work. The final 4 minutes require making one concrete decision. This rigid time limit forces the leader to prepare. For the staff, it creates a reliable guarantee. They know exactly what to expect, and they trust that the meeting will end on time. Implementing this is a discipline. Without intentional guardrails, this tight schedule usually collapses by the 3rd week. The most common failure is letting the time creep back up because one more thing feels urgent. A parent complaint or a new state requirement lands in an inbox, and it feels important enough to break the format just this once. To stop this, the principal has to enforce a standing rule out loud. Anything outside the core 3 jobs goes to the memo or a separate working group. The whole staff does not need to sit through a conversation about the copy release. The second failure happens when a decision turns into a debate. If a leader walks in and asks an open-ended question, a 4-minute decision instantly inflates into a 14-minute discussion. The leader has to frame the choice before anyone sits down. You bring 2 options to the table, ask for a quick read from the room, and then make the final call. Finally, staff might assume the short format means leadership is cutting corners or avoiding the hard work of leading the school. The principal has to explain the reasoning in the first meeting. You tell them this format exists because their time is valuable. When teachers hear that their schedule is being protected, suspicion turns into buy-in. You only have a brief window to set this tone. August and September are when staff expectations for the year calcify. It is much easier to establish this pace from week 1 than it is to try and retrain a frustrated staff in November. Respecting a teacher's time is a direct tool for retention. Burnout often stems from a felt lack of respect for a teacher's voice and schedule, and the faculty meeting is the most visible recurring signal of that respect. For Christian schools, there's a spiritual stake as well. These meetings are a moment where the school's mission is modeled for the adults. A session that focuses attention, evaluates work honestly, and makes decisions with conviction models exactly what the school is trying to teach its students. When a meeting opens with a disconnected devotion and then pivots into lunchroom duty rotations, the spiritual framing reads as decoration. Staff notice the disconnect, even when nobody says it out loud. Protecting that 12-minute boundary provides the staff with recurring proof that their time is valued. They walk out of the room with their planning periods intact and a clear decision made, ready to focus on their students.